The first thing that I can tell you about gross income is that tax law says that everything is taxable unless it's specifically excludable. So when somebody comes to me and says, I rent out my back 40, and a guy comes over and pays it, grows the state for sources, and pays me a couple grand a year, is that taxable unless I can find a specific exclusion? The answer is yes. Right? So that's basically what this says. Tax code defines gross income as all income from whatever source derived. This means all sources of income are included unless specifically excluded. So you do a little CrossFit consulting on the side, Tanner. Is that income? Sure it is. My question is just, do you have a business? Are you self-employed? Or is it other income that's only going to happen once? But yeah, generally, unless I can go, and you should probably open your books to page 2-3, please. Or I'm sorry, yeah, 2-3. For specific exclusions, this is really all that's excluded. Everything else is taxable. You'll notice on page 2-3 at the bottom, exclusions include things like gifts and inheritances, life insurance proceeds, veterans benefits, workers' comp, okay, mostly social nets, and passage of family wealth, essentially. Child support payments, welfare payments, casualty insurance proceeds, military allowances, minister's dwelling, you can read as well as I can, they're mostly social service safety nets and passage of wealth. Otherwise, everything's taxable, okay?
My favorite one in the inclusions is embezzled funds, because you're going to report that.
Well, that's what our buddy Manafort is ultimately busted for, isn't it? Right, is essentially embezzlement.
It's just so funny. It's like, why
Right.
would you
Yeah, and that's what historically brought down the mafia, that's what brings down modern day drug and child traffickers. Oftentimes isn't the crime,
it's the tax.
it's the tax evasion. It's like, dude, you did not report the fact you made $5 million stealing heroin last year. That's a problem with the IRS.
I love it. It's awesome.
Non-cash items, so I do some work and you pay me, give me Stud Wars worth 10 grand. That's taxable. Non-cash items are included in my income at fair market value. Or I do your tax return, you come over and trim my trees. I have a quarter of my clients I barter with. Oh, you cut hair, you cut trees, you do siding, awesome. I need all those things taken care of. But that's all taxable. Barter transactions are includable. They still have to include the fair market value of my tree trimmer services as income on my, what do I file? Schedule C for self-employment income, right? This whole Bitcoin, dark web, cryptocurrencies made the IRS crazy because it's not traceable and trackable at the level. It's not reportable to the IRS where they will cross-check on it. But that will happen. Interest income. You know this. If you make more than $1,500 in interest income, you've got to put it on Schedule B. If you make less than $1,500 of interest income, do you still have to pay tax on it? Is it income?
You still pay tax.
Sure, you just don't have to do a Schedule B. So we should all have probably a 1040 sitting in front of us. Not an easy, a full 1040. Which you would think that I would have marked. First one to find it is the gold star. D-11. Appendix D, page 11. Just put your finger in there. So I have interest. That's less than $1,500. It's going to show up straight on line 8A as interest income, but I'm not going to have to attach a Schedule B. Government bonds. Government bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Slight oxymoron these days, but okay. So if you purchase, somebody came to me yesterday and said they got war bonds. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard that since my dad passed away. Those are very old-fashioned instruments. At any rate, they're probably Series EEs. These bonds are all issued by the United States government, so when you read about government debt, this is what it is essentially. Is the government issues bonds, and we buy them, or more accurately, the Chinese and the Saudi Arabians buy them. They own something like 92% of our outstanding debt. Why do they do that? Because we pay interest, right? Government pays interest to them. There's three kinds of government bonds, EEs, EHs, and Is. I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time going over each of them. E's are no longer, no. H's are double H's are no longer being issued. I's, the interest is adjusted for inflation, so that's a little bit of a hedge against inflationary risk. And double E bonds are sort of the old-fashioned, what you would call, war bonds. And the way that they happen with double E bonds is you purchase them at a discount, so you purchase a $1,000 bond for $600, and in 20 years you cash it in for $1,000. That other $400 is your interest, of course. Okay? So you pay tax on the interest in the year that you redeem the bond. With I's, interest is taxed either each year or when you redeem them. You have a choice. Now, the interesting thing about federal income tax, or federal interest, does somebody have a manual recap that they can pull pretty easily and look at the two columns on Montana? And tell me what you see about federal interest on your Montana manual recap. Is it a reduction or an add back?
Reduction.
So you're going to want to start making this matrix in your notes because we're going to fill it out. What am I saying? So I get $300 in interest on my double E bonds that I inherited from my dad. Is that taxable on my 1040? Absolutely. Interest income. But then you go and look at your Montana manual recap, and where do you see federal interest? In an addition or reduction? It's a reduction. It's not taxable at the state level. So it's actually going to show up as a reduction on my Montana tax return. And you would put that on your manual recap because that would help you make sure that you entered it correctly in the software and it came through on your reduction column. Okay, let me just finish this because these slides are written for federal disbursement around the country, so there's nothing Montana centric on it. So let me just fill this out. So now I go and I buy some infrastructure bonds in Alabama. And they pay me interest. State interest on state bonds, like they're called muni bonds, are not taxable for the Fed. So it's not going to show up as income on your 1040. Well, what does it say on the manual recap? Non-Montana muni bond interest is an add back. Non-Montana, so any state or anywhere else that issues a bond in the United States or Puerto Rico or Virgin Islands, Oklahoma, I guess, that pays interest, it's not taxable at the federal level,
But Montana's like, yeah, you gotta add that back and pay income tax on that interest in Montana, because it doesn't do Montana any good. But if I buy a bond in Montana, say I buy a bond for, put up Havers wastewater treatment plant, I don't pay tax on that anywhere. It's not taxable anywhere.
Are those states like that?
I don't know that. I would assume, because why? Why is the state of Montana saying, listen, you don't need to pay any income tax to us if you buy a Montana bond?
Encourage people to invest in Montana.
And it allows me to drop the interest rate on the bond because it's not taxable to you. See what I'm saying? So if I'm Haver, I can issue a bond of 5%, and if you don't have to pay tax on it, that's the same, I mean, there's a mathematical calculation, I'm just making this up, but that's the same as a 6.2% bond if I had to pay tax. So really Montana's helping to subsidize Haver to put up their wastewater treatment plant by a tax break. And that's exactly what's happening here. How about a corporate bond, just like I buy an Apple bond? That's taxable everywhere. That's just flat out interest income, right? This resource you should put somewhere front and center, because you'll use this a lot. Dividend income. Somebody was asking about when we were talking about qualified dividends, how do we know if they're qualified? There's basically three kinds of dividends: ordinary, non-taxable, and capital gain distributions. And this is a really neat answer, but your 1099 div tells you in little boxes which it is. And I just input it. Victoria was going to put little boxes down. So ordinary dividends is basically your most common find. It's the company has earned net income and they're returning a share of the profits to shareholders. Pretty traditional. And most of your ordinary dividends are qualified. And they'll tell you that right on the 1099 div, and I have to tell you that in the case. Non-taxable dividends, I almost never see those. You definitely see these capital gain distributions. It's when the stock's been reduced to a zero basis and then they can continue to distribute funds. And what's interesting about this is these are tax-free capital gain rates. And we now know how to look that up, right? You don't need to put your dividends on a Schedule B unless they get to $1,500. And there's no adjustment on Montana. This should look really familiar. This is exactly, I think, the matrix that we looked up in Chapter 1, wasn't it? If my highest marginal regular tax bracket is 10 to 15%, I pay 0 on qualifying dividends, and so on and so forth. 25 to 35, 39.6. And we recognize that these rates, these tax brackets are now functionally different. The Medicare surtax still exists. Anybody remember when the surtax kicks in on unearned income? I think it's when you make more than 200 grand a year unearned income. Yeah, that means I really am not working and I'm cashing a, $50,000 a quarter check. Yeah, so somebody's left me a ton of money, basically. Or I've made a ton of money and invested it and I'm not pulling it out. That's for high income, unearned income. Alimony. We've seen alimony on our tax return. If you look at the 1040, can you on the face of the 1040 tell me what 2 lines alimony impacts?
11
Yeah.
and 31A.
Yeah. Am I getting alimony or am I paying it? If I get it, it is taxable on line 11. And it will be tied out So line 31A, who's overpaying me alimony, is going to put in my social security number right there on 31A and deduct it. And if those lines don't tie out, everyone's going to get their tax returns kicked back. And alimony is taxable, but it's got to be these 5 caveats. It's got to be in cash. It's got to be made in connection with a divorce decree, a written instrument. The payments can't continue after the death of the ex-spouse. It can't be called anything other than alimony, and you can't be living in the same household anymore because that's just basically a transfer of wealth to estate taxation. That's illegal. So it's got to be subject to these 5 caveats. This is probably beyond our scope. You don't see much of this. All right, let's take a look at this though and see if you can crunch this out. Lots of times in divorce decrees, there'll be a certain amount of monthly or quarterly transfer of cash from one party to another, and part of it will be child support and part of it will be alimony. What do you do with child support? Is that deductible?
For the person paying.
It's not. Not, remember, it was on that exclusion list on page 2-3, wasn't it?
But it's not taxable.
It's not taxable to you, and it's not deductible by me. Only alimony. So look at this example. Complying with the 2017 written divorce decree, Frederick pays Shauna $1,800 a month. The decree specifies that the payments will be reduced by 40% when their daughter in Shauna's custody becomes 18. How much can Frederick deduct per year as alimony? So what would you tell me about that $1,800 a month?
That 720 of it is child support.
But if it goes away when the child turns 18, by nature, that is child support. Unless you negotiate some sort of pay after college. So how much does he get to deduct a year?
$1,080.
Annually.
$12,960.
Okay, so you're going to take the 1,800 times the 60% times the 12 months. And that's the deduction. When clients come in, they're like, nobody loves making these payments, believe me, this is never the pleasant part of your tax interview with somebody. I pay my $3,300 a month. She sits on her ass. Yeah. Give me the divorce decree, and it's never all out. It's normally mostly child support. I shouldn't say probably, but I mean, you just can't frankly believe somebody when they tell you it's all out. Because they know, usually they know the tax office, they talk to their buddies whose ex-wife also sits on her ass and does nothing. So, and their buddy says, my accountant takes it all as alimony. Like, well, your accountant wants to see the divorce decree. So, and normally it's, allocated between the two. So make sure to do that. Child support is not deductible to the payer. It's not taxable to the payee. If this is critical, if the payer falls behind just on those monthly payments in general, he or she gets nothing until they put their child support up. So in other words, say I get 10 grand behind, and now I start making my $3,300 a month payments. I can't take any of that as an alimony deduction until I get caught up with my child support. And then there's a whole slew of other rules for pre-1985 divorces. If I ever have somebody come in, new client that's been divorced for a really long time, I just have to go pull these rules because I barely ever use them. But this is the kind of stuff, I hope that it's starting to kind of sink in, like, you can't know everything, but you need to have just a little bit of glimpse of what it is you need to look up. Okay, prizes and awards. This is often very, I guess, just unknown to people. So when you get a prize, whether it's through your company or, you win it, somebody draws your name and you win the $10,000 RV for the Boys and Girls Club raffle, guess what comes with it? A 1099. and you get 1099 on it, and it's fully taxable. The only thing that's an exception to that is in the yellow. If you get an award for safety or length of service. I'm so glad she's been at Grizz for 25 years. Here you get a new pen, which is about how it rolls here. Then if it's under $400, I don't get 1099 for it. If they were like, oh, you've been at Grizz for 25 years, that's amazing, here you go to Maui, then I'm gonna pay tax on any amount over either $400 or $1,600, depending upon whether the university has a formal qualified plan in place. That's just a written document. Remember those accountable plans from payroll? Same kind of thing. So if I'm a company, like say that my company sells insurance, and a standard piece of what I do to incent my salespeople is these trips, I'm going to have a qualified plan on the, you know, you can just pull up the internet frequently and type it up, or I'm going to pay my CPA to do it. They're going to type up the qualified plan, so when I give you that trip to Maui for $4,000, you're taxed on the difference between $4,000 and $1,600. Does that make sense? But only if it's for length of service or safety achievements.
And you also, I mean, those are for prizes and awards, right? And gifting is different, right?
Gifting's totally different. You're my friend, you're my nephew, you're my brother, and I'm like, here.
Isn't that 14,000?
You can give up to $14,000 per year per person transfer of wealth tax-free. So if I'm wealthy and I'm older and I've got you three are my nephews, I'm going to start gifting to you and your kids and your spouses 14 grand per year to start passing my estate on to you.
Or if you're married or something, you could always split the gift between the spouse.
You would each get a gift of $14,000. But I'm not your aunt and I'm not wealthy. So that's all unfortunate.
Important information though, right?
It is important if you've got somebody in your family. Okay, annuities. This is a pretty significant conversation. What do you guys remember about annuities from personal finance? Is that what you heard about it?
Is that, I'm not in that class right now, but isn't it?
We haven't talked about it yet this semester.
Isn't it an annuity like a, it's like a regimented payment plan slash retirement thing, usually from like a principal, permanent principal interest?
It is basically an annuity. We talked about it in another class too. There's a couple things that make an annuity an annuity. First off, the definition of it is with the equal periodic payment. And every single one of those words is important. It's equal. $2,839.26 a month. It's equal, it's periodic, in other words, it's every month, it's every quarter, it's every year, but it's not like when you feel like it. And it's a cash transfer, it can't be property. So annuities happen in lots of different venues, or avenues, or instruments, I should say. But the most common one is, I've worked all my life and I've saved up $500,000. And now I'm retiring, and I want to ensure that $500,000 lasts forever. Okay. How do I do that?
You get an annuity where you buy it for $500,000 and then they pay you enough for you to live on it every month until you die, rather than even if it's more than $500,000.
Absolutely. And what happens if I sign the contract and I give you my $500,000 and I get hit by a bus on the way home? It's all gone. Your heirs get not a penny. So you see the risk, but you also see the reward. I've got $500,000. My aunt just turned 103. My grandma's both lived till the late 90s. My mom was 93 when she passed. Genetically, I'm predisposed to live a long life. $500,000 is not going to get me anywhere close to 35 years post-retirement. So I go and I bet on the cotton. I'm like, here, take my $500,000. And they do the calculation. And it's really based on very few things. It's really based on two things, your gender and whether you smoke or not. I take that back. If you're older and you're doing that, I believe you do need to do things things like echocardiogram and blood pressure and just basic scans.
It's like a retirement plan that operates like life insurance.
It is that's exactly what it is.
You build up.
It is a very terrifying decision to a lot of people, myself included. Every time I think about it, it makes my heart just shake. Because if I take up $500,000 and say, I'm going to take care of myself off of it forever, I've got to make the assumption that I'm going to live to 100. And that's going to greatly decrease how much I get to pull out every month, right? And impact my quality of life. And then, you kick off at 73, it's like, shit, I never did go to Italy. I never, so you see what I'm saying? But you don't have the crystal ball, nobody does. This transfers the risk to somebody else. But it's like, hey kids,
You don't have it.
you have no estate. Right. Okay, so you see what the issue is.
Yeah.
When you give the money to the proverbial person, and there's a million more things I could talk about as applies to annuities, one of them being that there's a ton of rip-offs out there.
Right, and then it's so complicated.
They're very complex instruments, and they're just, even what I know as a CPA, I'm pretty sure when my sister made this decision, we got her a tax attorney to look over all the documents, because she's single, and she doesn't have any other backup plans. They're very complex instruments, and you do not want to go into them lightly. You definitely want high-level professional help in reading the contract and making a decision.
It seems to me if they want you to get a physical, they would be more interested in you coming out in poor health than in good health.
Well, that's just it. They have to make sure they're going to make money.
They want to cover their own actuarial mortality tables and their own risk.
If they didn't make money,
Yeah.
they would be a business.
Yeah, they don't love me coming in and my grandma lived to 102. Are you kidding?
Yeah, and
No.
if you're really, really healthy.
But it's a pool. It's a pool.
Yeah.
Your family has cancer and her family has diabetes and my family has, whatever addiction and da-da-da-da-da. It's a pool.
So
And
you
then,
don't have to disclose the information of the longevity of your family necessarily, depending on what the annuity.
I don't know the answer to that. I think as you get older, like at my age, if I wanted to go buy an annuity, there's very few questions they're going to ask. They're going to probably be able to look at me and establish gender, and they're going to ask if I smell their butt. And they're probably going to draw blood and see if there's crazy in my blood, whatever.
Because the more risk that you have in life, the better off that you're going to be if you buy
Sure.
a big, huge
Sure.
chunk policy at
Sure.
5%.
My little mind right now thinks the best way to go is like half and half. Turn over half the risk and then manage half the risk yourself, and somehow in my mind that mitigates, but I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not. The point of it from a taxation standpoint also, you have to be aware of this, is when I give them my, say, $250,000, the part that they pay back out to me, that's the return of my own money, that's not taxable. See what I'm saying? So the taxable part of the payments they give me is essentially the interest, right? Because obviously when I give you $250,000, the anticipation is that's going to earn X% over the next 30 years. They're going to return my initial payments to me. They're going to pay me some interest on my money. And there's some magic number that's break even. If I die in 21.6 years, that's going to be break even. And I can calculate that. They're not going to show you that, but you can calculate that using present value tables. So the way that we figure out how much is taxable, and again, this is also oftentimes on your, what do you get when you get an annuity? What's your form that you get in the mail? It's a 1099. Do you remember? It's an R for retirement. That comes your 401k distributions, come on that, your IRA distributions, your pension distributions, your annuity distributions, all come on 1099 Rs. And they will oftentimes helpfully make that differentiation in the two little boxes. But here's the general rule. The first thing you have to do is calculate how much of the payment is excluded. So the $2,326.11 I get every month, how much of it is a return of my own principal? In other words, how much is excluded? What percentage of that? and then multiply it by the amount of annuity that I receive. Now, I would probably jot down this formula, and then we're gonna work through one of these. So the calculation for the exclusion ratio is number one. Investment in contract means how much did I give them? I gave them $250,000. So that's the investment in the instrument or the contract. And you divide that by how much they're giving me every year. So that $2,325, you have to multiply by 12, right, to get the annual payment. Times how long I'm gonna live. And this is where the IRS is super helpful. They tell you how long you're gonna live. They have little tables.
Yeah.
And they're just based on actuarial mortality tables, and they change every year because really essentially, well, I find this really interesting. I just talked about love it. Our mortality tables increase every year in America, for how long we supposedly live. And then obviously that's based on new healthcare regimes. But yet, as a nation, we're way, way, way sicker than we were 30 years ago. No, there's not a lot more people. We're actually decreasing in population as a nation. So you calculate this exclusion ratio. My exclusion ratio is 74%. Then you multiply that exclusion ratio by the amount of the annual annuity, and that's how much my payout. I don't pay tax.
Probably both.
I think when you look at every single rate of obesity and heart disease and diabetes and, I don't know, that's a good question.
But I mean, actually.
Anecdotally, I think we look less healthy than we did for sure when I was a kid.
The changes in the tables are pretty good. I mean, now people that have cancer in the past can actually get life insurance back if they're cancer.
True.
For a period of time.
Yeah, true that. Okay, so let's try this guy. He's coming to me and he's saying, here's what I'm planning on doing. I want to know how much of my annuity actually taxed on every year. So he did say $750,000. And the contract administrator runs all the calcs and tells him, hey, you get $4,800 a month forever. And Dim's probably, I don't know, based on the IRS table shows he's expected to live another 18 years. Let's say he's 67 when he purchases it. And the question is, how much, he's making $4,800 a month times 12 months, how much is excludable each tax year in Dim's retirement? In other words, what's the return on his own principal? And these are calculations you will do for people when they come in getting ready to retire, because they want to know what their tax liability is going to be in retirement.
He only lives 19 years, that's a lot of loss for him.
5 times 12 is 60. No, so he's getting almost 60 right here. Times 20 years is 1.2 million. Right, but there's interest in there. He's got to make interest on that 750. And obviously, it's not saying he's gonna live 19 years. It's saying that's what's projected based on mortality tables.
I did do that, yeah. Okay.
I mean, I just made these numbers up. They may or may not be totally reasonable. Anybody get the exclusion ratio yet?
16.5%.
So of the money he gets back, about 70% of that, or 68.5, is going to be excluded from tax. The other 31.5% is over future value or present value tables is interest and interest on interest. So when Din comes to me and he's looking at this annuity, he wants me to do this calculation.
What's 48,000 times 12, do you have that amount? 96, 57 cents? Yeah. So what he wants to know is of the 57,600 I'm giving him retirement every year that I need to live off of, how much is my tax bill going to be? Okay? No, stick with me here. So now tell me how much. You guys can figure this out. You have the skills to go all the way with the questions you just posed to me. How much, Ben wants to know, really, he doesn't get all of it, but he wants to know what their tax bill would be every year. Can you tell him that based on this information? He's single, he's got no kids.
So taxable income would be the difference between paying and exclusion.
That's not going to be his TI.
That's going to be a TI.
That's not going to be his TI. So, I want you to think about this so we know the sum total of his income now, right? Plug that into the tax formula and tell Deb what his tax is going to be. Because he's trying to make a budget. You gotta plug it into the tax formula. You can't just jump right away to the tables. Can you? And I think I also told you he was 67. He's like, oh my God, informational. He's 67, he's single, no dependents. This is the sum total that's happening to him in his retirement. That's never true because he's going to get Social Security, but we won't tell you that. He's single and he's 67. He doesn't need to file a tax return. I can see that. He doesn't even need to file. Which is a bummer because I just did all this work for Ben and I'm going to get no cash love back from him because I don't even have to file a tax return. Before I even get to the standard deduction or the exemption, his AGI is only $18,144. So his standard deduction plus his exemption is going to exceed this. He doesn't need to file at all. I'm going to probably charge him for a half-hour consulting because he's not going to be a tax return. You see why this is important? Did anybody else catch that straight away that the AGI wasn't allowed?
Isn't it just the 6350 and 1250 and the 4050?
Oh, yeah, no, you're right, you're totally right. 4,050, 1,250, and 6,350. Oh, my bad, 18,144.
So I got $647.
649, yeah, okay, my bad, no, absolutely. He is gonna have to pay tax, $650, right?
On the tax table, it's actually 648.
640. Yay, I do get to do a tax return for him. He's got a tax bill. What would you do with him now? Would you tell him that he should make estimated payments? Is that worth it? Yeah, it's totally up there. I would probably give him, because he's gonna get like a $10 a year penalty, and some people are like freak out on penalties, so I would explain that to him.
It might just be easier to pay it when he goes in to do his taxes, to write a check and
Right, but I'm saying then he would have to pay the, penalty. Okay, let's just finish up a couple more slides. I'm going to give you some work to do over the weekend. Yay. So really this has kind of gone the way of the dinosaur, but in the old days you went to work for somebody and your employer paid in, and then you got this magic thing called a pension when you retired. These are not taxable to the employee in the current year, but they're not included as part of the investment. These don't really exist really outside of public employee retirement systems anymore. That's not completely true. Some hospitals do it for their nurses and doctors, but really this kind of idea is pretty much gone. If you die and you have life insurance and your beneficiary is paid out, it's non-taxable to your beneficiary.
And it passes through probate.
Huh?
I said, and it passes through probate, like insurance.
Life insurance proceeds will become a part of the estate past through probate, yeah. But the only exception to this, well, there's two exceptions. One is if you've got a policy, I don't know that I've ever seen one of these, but if you've got a policy that pays out over like some years, then I suppose I could set that up. Like say I was single and I wanted my life insurance to go to my kids and I thought they were too young to get it all in 1 year or something. Maybe I could have it paid out over a few years. And then it would come with interest, right? And so the part that was interest would be taxable. And then, so that's pretty straightforward. Okay, these are sort of weird situations. They're called biatical settlements. Has anybody ever heard of them? A biatical settlement is when you have a terminally ill diagnosis from a doctor in 24 months, or you've got something like chronic, like, I don't know, ALS or something, some sort of chronic condition. And I've got a life insurance policy, but I need the money from that to take care of myself. I sell it to a broker. I've got $1 million policy on myself. I sell it to you for $700,000. And you cash me out, you give me $700,000 that I use up to live on. Can't work anymore and I need all sorts of special care. And then when I die, you get $1 million. Okay. What she does, though, is she goes out and she buys $1 million policies from a whole bunch of us. And then she sells them, she packages them like a stock and sells them to all of you, your investors. Okay. Can anybody guess why these became very popular in 1981, 82, 83? The AIDS epidemic. And so, I mean, it's so morbid, but it was this high-yielding instrument. And people would go like the Castro District of San Francisco and, east side of Brooklyn and traditionally areas where AIDS first reared its ugly head, and they would buy people's life insurance policies up and package them. And then they primarily sold them in Florida to elderly people, like, penalizing this sort of lifestyle and making money. But then they found the AIDS, the cocktail, the AZT cocktail, and people weren't dying anymore from it. So then the biatical settlement brokers got sued. Oh, it's just horrible. It's just so horrific.
Yeah.
But be aware, on the bright side, if there is, of this discussion, that if you're ever in a situation, you have life insurance and you feel like you need some of the cash to meet your needs, that there is the option to do this. Or a parent or a grandparent needs it. Gifts and inheritances are excludable, we know that. This is really important. We don't cover any of this in this class, but there's a whole nother realm of tax law called estate tax. It's not income tax. It's not tax on money you make, i.e. income. It's tax on money that you die with. And this is hated by obviously wealthy people and conservative folks. And also, very justifiably, by a lot of not wealthy folks, but landowners in Montana who have a value locked up in their land but have very little liquid assets. And then you die and you have to pay estate tax. What do you have to do with your land? What do your heirs have to do? They have to sell the land to pay the tax. So, I mean, it's a very complex and controversial set of laws. We're not going to cover it at all. But what happens with inheritances what happens when, like, say, grandma dies with, you know, a $15 million ranch in eastern Montana, is it goes through something called probate. And there's different laws for Montana versus the feds. And the state itself files a tax return called a 1041 and pays tax. And then what's left gets distributed to the heirs.
So that's why it's not, the inheritance itself is not taxable.
Right, because there's already, and if it's under, I think it's like, the,
11.
yeah, it just got like tripled with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act because, for obvious reasons. So it's like, I think if your estate has to be like over $11.3 million or something. So it really, you know, for all intents and purposes, eradicates everybody but the very highest net worth people. And then the gift, so gifts, there's a gift tax, which is the exact same rate as the state tax. So if you gift more than that $14,000 per person per year, you get hit with the gift tax. So quick example of that and why you have to think about these things. I had friends and clients in Colorado, and they had this chain of dry cleaners, industrial dry cleaners, that they sold for a lot of money. And then they set their kid up in a auto repair shop, a mechanic shop. And I can hardly believe their CPA still got their job. They set the kid up, they trained him, blah, 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 blah. When it became clear that he was going to be able to manage the shop on his own profitably and sustainably, they gave him the title to the auto shop, worth a couple $1 million. So a couple $1 million minus $14,000 is all considered a gift and all susceptible to gift tax. Oh, wow. Yeah, that is something that would not only lose you your job as a CPA, could possibly get you sued.
There's ways around it too.
Not in that situation, there
You
wasn't.
could use the unified estate tax credit.
But it's not a state tax, it's gift tax.
No,
It's
I
gift
know,
tax.
But if you can give somebody more than 14,000 and have it not be taxed at all, well, you have to take it out of your estate when you die. Get that.
That was not what was happening in Colorado 8 years ago. I mean, they coughed up $225,000 in tax. Okay, just last couple quick slides. Scholarships are essentially excluded from income unless it's like, I get a scholarship, but I have to show up in your research lab 5 hours a week. That's really compensation. Or if it's for room and board, then it's taxable. But if it's scholarships for fees or tuition or books, not taxable. Employer paid accident and health insurance premiums. My employer pays my health insurance. That is awesome for you. I don't have to include that, the value of those premiums. Okay, let's just talk about what's on tap for next week.